17th. I did that earlier too. And we are being recorded by 1623 Studios. And at this point for guests, we have Wendy Hansberry, who will be first on our agenda. So roll call vote of members present: John Round,
Here.
Brian Solacey,
Here.
Kathy Bellata, Ann Harrison,
Here.
and Becky Jakes. We have a full crew. We also have some other guests here. We'll find out who they are later, I suppose. First of all, I will open up to public comments on non-agenda items. Is there anybody who would like to speak on non-agenda items here or on Zoom? Okay, seeing nobody interested in doing so, we'll move right along. Chairman's report. I received an email from Planning Board member Chris Olney thanking the board members who were able to participate in the Planning Board Public Forum, which was really well done, very well attended. And I think that's that on that one. And we will move right on to the first item on the agenda, which is the ratification of the health agent being hired, Wendy Hansberry.
So pleased to present Wendy to you. Wendy was a very strong applicant, comes to us from Topsbury, where she is currently the health agent. Wendy has an impressive list of certifications and credentials behind her name, which enables her to provide the full suite of services that we need out of a health department. We'll be having a transition time where we'll continue to rely on our current contractor services, so there'll be an overlap, which will give everyone opportunity to adjust and get things going. But Wendy was a unanimous choice of the search committee, Board of Health members, myself and Michelle, HR director, and would appreciate your ratification of her hiring.
Wonderful. And we did all get to meet Wendy, so thank you very much for coming in. May I have a motion to ratify Wendy Hansberry, the hiring of Wendy Hansberry as the health agent?
So moved.
Second.
Close tie there. Moved by Ann Harrison, seconded by John Round. Roll call vote. John Round,
Yes.
Brian Solacey,
Yes.
Kathy Bellata,
Yes.
Ann Harrison,
Yes.
Becky Jakes says yes. It's unanimous. Thank you and welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the opportunity. I'm really excited to get started and work with the Manchester by the Sea team. It's going to be
We look
exciting.
forward to
Thank
having
you.
you on board. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Have a great
When do
night.
you start?
I start on the 14th of November.
Okay.
And probably actually make the rounds and try to stop in again, just to let everybody know I'm here and willing to hear questions or come on down and see me kind of thing.
Great.
Wonderful.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks
you.
very
much.
Thank you.
All right. Next up, we have update on the master plan. Greg, did you want to?
So at your last meeting, you had a more detailed discussion about the harbor master plan. I think there's general consensus that that is a good move, that we should embark on that task. So the questions become, how best to do that, whether or not it should be under the auspices of the Harbor Advisory Committee as the lead. I tend to lean towards that as a way to proceed. Obviously, they can draw on other boards and committees and stakeholders as needed, including hiring a consultant, most likely, to help undertake the project. In terms of funding, we will need some dollars to, particularly for the payment of a consultant, the hire consultant. It's possible that we could secure grant monies for this. Seacoast Economic Council would be one potential source. We've been successful with them in the past. And so with any luck, we would be successful again going forward on a request like this. There may be some potential other sources as well. But in the interim, we had talked about maybe putting a request on for the special town meeting. I think my own opinion is that we don't have all the ducks in a row yet to ask for those dollars. So I think we should take the time to do that. We do have professional services account that we can draw on in the interim, and then ask for dollars at their annual town meeting if needed. So I'd recommend in terms of the funding that that's how we proceed. And as I say, I also feel that rather than create a whole other task force, obviously that's an option. But again, just sort of the proliferation of task force and committees, et cetera, I think we perhaps first might try to use our existing committees that are in place.
There are two kinds of harbor plans.
Yes.
Which kind are we doing?
I would recommend it's not necessary to do the state mandated version, because I don't see us seeking changes to state law. And that's really the only reason you would do a state mandated or a state ratified project, master plan approach. So it's a little simpler to do just a local plan that does not meet all the requirements of state law. So it is a little easier to do, and I don't think we're losing anything by doing it that way.
I tend to think that, including some people who are not on the harbor committee,
Oh, yes, I definitely agree.
in not just as consultants, but I would lean toward at least putting together a discussion of having more than the harbor committee.
Oh, I see it as being more than a harbor committee, yes, but I see it being under their auspices. So they would form their own subcommittee in essence, but it would be under them.
The subcommittee of them is them.
Well, subcommittees can include people outside of the committee itself.
Okay.
So we have done that in the past for other projects. But again, I welcome your input and thoughts on how to best do that.
I think there's merit to having it initially starting with Harbor Advisory Committee, because they're the ones who have the
There are
broad
other
grasp.
people in town who have a pretty good grasp of the harbor.
Oh, absolutely, but they're the ones who are the group that advises us. So as such, they have broader information, I think, not an individual's perspective, but a broader group's perspective. But let's go around, and John, do you have any comments on that?
Yeah, I mean, my inclination at this point is to give a nod to the Harbor Committee to say, yeah, we'd like you to champion this before it's a full bore, yeah, let's do this. I don't know what the cost is. I know that we got to have some money in the whole deal, but I don't know how many thousands of dollars this initiative costs. I would like to hear from the Harbor Committee in particular as to who they are going to have as the captain for this initiative, and what his or her thoughts, or I should say thoughts are not only within the committee, but also broadly, how they see that going. I think they have seen from the minutes and from the discussion here, yeah, we want a group that's larger than just the Harbor Committee or gets input from other people who really can provide some great input. But I'd like to hear from the Harbor Committee captain of this initiative as to what their thoughts are and how that is going forward. So I think that's what I want to hear as perhaps the next step, along with what the cost situation is and what the chances are for these various, what Seacoast Economic Council, I think you said, or other sources are. So we can push it along, but really the Harbor Committee has to be the champion for it to make it happen.
Brian?
I'm with John, I want to see a structure. I think that, and to Ann's point, there's a lot of resources here in town that fall outside the Harbor Advisory Committee. And so I'd like to see how they can plan on reaching out and incorporating the resources that are here in town. All right. We have some disparate groups that can take a look at this, including neighbors that don't sit on the HAC at this point, recreational boaters and commercial fishermen who all are all stakeholders in this, as well as everyone in the town. So I'd like to see how the structure works.
Kathy?
Yeah, I mean, when we discussed this 2 weeks ago, I think I did advocate for the Harbor Advisory Committee taking the lead. My only true care about is making sure that there are not two parallel committees dealing with the harbor. So we talked about a task force versus a Harbor Advisory Committee. I could go either way. I just want to make sure that there are not two separate teams pulling on our harbor master at the same time. So what I would like to see is the Harbor Advisory Committee take a stab at, here's what we need in terms of a team and an approach for getting the plan going. And that should include people outside of the Harbor Advisory Committee. And then if we, at that point, deem we want to set up a separate task force of some kind, I would entertain it at that time. And if we decide we need to do that, I would actually put the Harbor Advisory Committee on a pause or hiatus, so we don't have two teams vying for the same resources at the same time. So I say give them a shot to come forth with an approach, and then we make a determination at that point which way.
Specifically, now that we're going to be adding 2 new members to the
Right.
HAC as well. So, there's some unknown factors there.
Who approves this plan if we have a plan? The master plan was approved by the planning board.
I'll have to double check that. I think
Because
it's,
if
I
the
think it's
committee
you
that
as a,
writes it
yeah,
can approve it, it's kind of a closed loop.
right. I believe, I want to say it's you as a board, but I need to verify that.
Okay.
That's what I thought I
That's a
heard.
good question.
Yeah, yeah.
It's a basic question. I should know the answer to that, but I have to look it up.
So where do we go from here?
Well, first and foremost is, do we feel compelled to have it come to special town meeting or wait for the annual town meeting?
Nothing more on the special town meeting.
Yeah,
I
that's,
agree.
and that's, I think that that's a good idea. Okay, so, Bion, did you want to add anything to this?
No, I don't, I haven't heard anything that doesn't sound like it doesn't work to me.
Do you know, Brian, who gives approval?
I'm pretty sure if you're not going for the state approved, which I agree with, Manchester does not need, I think it's the select board.
Yeah. Okay, well, I'll verify, but that was my thought.
Okay. So at this point, Greg, what, the next steps beyond knowing we will
So I think
come back at the
Right, I think
annual
we'll-
town
I
meeting?
think Brian and I will sit down and put together some thoughts
Mhm.
and then present that at the next HAC meeting.
Okay, all right.
So following along with that, so the last HAC meeting was last week, so that would be 3 weeks from tomorrow, probably, if they're on that schedule.
Right.
And then the select board meeting after that is when we could hear back from them.
Yes.
We do not have a liaison to the Harbor Advisory Committee. And I am happy to do that. unless somebody else, I know you've got a lot on.
I'm not interested in that position, thank you.
Okay. Did anybody else, and everybody's,
I can do it, I've just got library and parks and recs, I mean.
okay,
I mean, there's
excellent,
really
thank you.
Not going on much in either one of these,
Okay,
except for pickleball.
so Brian and Greg. So the two steps, annual town meeting, and you and Bion will meet, and then go to the next Harbor Advisory Committee meeting, and then come back to us. Is that correct?
Sounds right.
Okay, excellent. And Brian is our new liaison. Might involve a cardboard boat.
Mine floated this year.
Now that we're adding more liaisons, could we get a liaison list, like
I have, yes,
posted
yes,
somewhere? Just 'cause I
absolutely.
keep forgetting who's.
Yeah. I have that back. Debbie, do you have something handy? And if not, I can go through my notes and,
I could put it together. I'll send it out to you tomorrow.
that's fast, yay. Okay, all right, excellent, thank you. So next up, we have the appointments for the Harbor Advisory Committee. We did receive the email forwarded to us from Carl Doan. And Bion, did you want to speak to this?
I don't think it would be appropriate for me to weigh in on Harbor Advisory Committee members. I'm not a member of the committee, and they answer to you, not to me, so I think I have to.
Okay,
be
well, we
quiet.
did have, thank you, Bion. 6
My pleasure.
initial people who were interested, one of whom was unable to make it to the meeting. So we have a very nice and diverse group from which to choose. I am inclined to go with what was recommended by Chair of Harbor Advisory Committee for the reasons he stated. The different perspectives that are brought. But I'd like to go around and hear from everybody. Are you recusing yourself at this point, or?
At this point, I would like to say that Jim Starkey is knowledgeable, passionate, and hardworking.
There's no doubt about that. My only concern is that we already have 2 Manchester Yacht Club members.
And
I'm
everybody is,
And, may I finish?
Mhm.
And to bring broader perspectives, that was mine. But yes, he is a very.
everybody on the committee is a customer of Manchester Marine or Crocker. So there are lots of conflicting interests. And I don't see Jim representing Manchester Yacht Club.
Okay, thank you. John Round?
Yeah, I'm inclined to go with the recommendations. In fact, I guess Carl's notes, he's got 3 folks down here. I am inclined to go with Jim simply because I think that Skip, while he offers a unique view, is going to have to recuse himself from a number of issues that will come up in front of this committee. Because he's just too involved in the harbor with his life, I think. So I think that while he has great input, and I would love to have him have input on the master plan or something on the harbor plan, I think that within the committee there'd just be too many conflicts. So for that reason, I think that Steve Mayo and Jim would be the best bets for the committee.
Brian?
I don't know Steve, I know Sean Zahn, excuse me, all right? I know he's been very passionate and very involved in the boating in the community, so I mean, I would support him. And I'm looking at, I'm conflicted, okay? For the same reasons that John pointed out, I think that Skip Crocker would make an excellent, the timing doesn't play well right now considering what's in front of us. But again, I'm thinking about other things. I've checked around the town, I've checked with other people, and I'm still, I would go with Skip. So I'm thinking Skip and Sean for myself.
Kathy?
Once again, we have a wealth of, it's an unusual situation, a wealth of candidates, and I do hope that whoever is not selected, that they, there's gonna be another round of interviews possibly next year, or the task force, that whatever we do for the master plan will expand the participation, so I do hope they get an opportunity to serve. My thinking here, and I poked a lot at this at the last meeting, I'm looking for diverse perspectives. I just have to publicly say I'm really disappointed that we don't have any female applicants this time, and I would ask that the members of the Harbor Advisory Committee make it a point to try to recruit members of the Manchester community who are not represented. That said, I'm really looking for new blood here. That's kind of what I looked at, and I'm looking at Sean Zahn. I don't know any of these gentlemen. I'll just say that I don't know any of them. Sean Zahn has just a really unique and interesting skill set. His experience in Boston, his environmental experience and he was on the Massport Environmental Committee. I just find that kind of a breath of fresh air to be brought into the committee. So that's why he was very interesting to me. I'm also on the fence between do we have the business representation specifically on the committee or not. Maybe Bion or Greg could answer a question. How often does the committee take a formal vote on something on which to advise us, whether it be fee? I mean, I'm just not familiar enough with how the committee does their work, and how often do they take an official vote on something to bring to us?
So, I mean, I'll let Brian chime in, but I would say, a couple, 3 times a year.
Okay.
So yes, looking at fees on not every year, but
Is that the main thing they vote on, is fees? or
fees is certainly one of the things, and just in regulations.
the regulations?
So, the regulations get reviewed and updated every other year or so as well. The recommendations for dredging, that'll be coming up again soon.
Is the dredging subcommittee still a viable team that is resurrected?
No, we haven't, we've sort of reverted back to the committee rather than the dredge committee. So what am I missing, Brian? What else?
No, that's about right. It's not frequent. There haven't been a lot of galvanizing issues for them to vote on for a while. A harbor master plan will certainly give them some red meat to work on. And
The
I expect
eelgrass
them to-
issue was one a few years back.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you for that clarification. So given that clarification, what I'd like to do is introduce what I consider to be new blood onto the committee. And so I am leaning towards Sean Zahn and Steve Mayo. And I would, however, like to see the marine businesses represented on the broader team. So Mr. Crocker, I hope he would be amenable to that. Whatever broader team we have specifically looking at the harbor master plan, I do think they need to have a voice in that. So that's kind of where my head is at right now.
And, Ann, did you,
I think Steve Mayo brings something important, and I support Jim.
this is going to be interesting. And I, again, for the reasons that Chair of Harbor Advisory stated, would support Steve Mayo and Skip Crocker, and Steve for the reasons everybody said, and Skip because we don't have a business representation, and the two marinas in town, bring a significant amount of revenue to the town, employing a large number of people, and that's a demographic not represented. So for those reasons, I'm inclined to support Steve Mayo and Skip Crocker, which brings us down to 2 for Jim Starkey, who I know would be diligent. I mean, yeah, there's no doubt about that. 2, 4 for Steve Mayo. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2 for Sean Zahn. And this is wonderful. We don't often get to have a situation where we have to make such a tough decision. And 2 for Skip Crocker. So I'm not sure what we do here.
Can we implement ranked choice voting? I don't know that would help us, but.
I'm wondering if it would help to ask those 3, and with thanks to David McKenna, but ask Skip, Jim, and Sean if we might speak with them again. Do we feel we need to, or I just am not sure how we go about this. Greg?
Well, so you can move forward with a motion to appoint Steve Mayo, get that out of the way. And then if someone wants to make a motion for one of the other 3, then see how it goes.
All right, do I have a motion to appoint Steve Mayo to the Harbor Advisory Committee?
So moved.
Second?
Okay, moved by Kathy Bellata, seconded by John Round. Roll call vote. John Round?
Yes.
Ryan Solacey?
No.
Kathy Bellata?
Yes.
Ann Harrison?
Yes.
And Becky Jakes says yes. So we have 4 yes, 1 no. Okay. May I have a motion from anybody else, for anybody else? All right, I will make a motion to approve Skip Crocker for appointment to the Harbor Advisory Committee. Is there a second? Okay, moved by Becky Jakes, seconded by Brian Solacey. Roll call vote. John Round,
No.
Brian
Yes.
Solacey,
Yes.
Kathy Bellata.
No.
Ann Harrison?
No.
Okay, so 2 yes, 3 no. All right, anybody else?
Make a motion to appoint Sean Zahn to Harbor Advisory.
Second.
Okay, moved by Brian Solacey, seconded by Kathy Bellata. Roll call vote. John Round,
No.
Brian Solacey,
Yes.
Kathy Bellata,
Yes.
Becky Jakes, no. Ann Harrison?
No.
Okay, so 2 yes, 3 no. All right. Anybody else?
I make a motion to appoint Jim Starkey.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Moved by John Round, seconded by Ann Harrison. Roll call vote. Ann Harrison?
Yes.
Kathy Bellata?
No.
Brian Solacey?
No.
John Round?
Yes.
And Becky Jake says no. So we have 2 yes, 3 no. All right, I think, no, I think at this point we will appoint Steve Mayo, and I would like to invite Skip, Jim, and Sean back to talk to the board and see if we can, and if we can all come up with very specific questions. So if we each have 3 questions, or something like that, we can ask them to come back to the first meeting in November, which is, let's see. No. Well, that brings us, the 7th, but is that
That's
a,
a special meeting date, right?
we have a special meeting on the 20th, correct? I don't know that they can make that, but that,
That's not.
No, the town meeting.
no, that's a, say it again,
Which month are you talking, I'm sorry?
November.
November 20th?
November, no.
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 We have a special meeting on the 20th of this month,
Which is
but
this
that's
Thursday.
very specific, and
That's
we
very
don't.
specific, yeah.
Right.
Okay.
So the next,
We don't have a meeting in November, which is probably a good thing.
well, we also need to find out when they're able to
Right.
attend. So the,
Question, would it make sense, since we're gonna ask the Harbor Advisory Committee to come back to us on their thoughts for the master plan, would it make sense for us to hear that before we finalize a decision on the membership on the advisory committee? 'Cause I thought we kind of, the way we left it was, you know, we're not sure what that team needs to look like, and if we wind up going forward with more of a task force, we might wanna put the other team to pause. I just don't, I'm just trying to think sequence of events to maximize efficiency in the discussion. Just a thought.
why don't we, let's come back to this. We know we're going to ask them to come back. I would like to make a clarification regarding the appointment of Steve Mayo. It will be for the term to run through June, a 3-year term to run through June of 2025. And we will get back to the remaining candidates. Is that, okay. Greg, you and I can circle back on that. Okay. Thank you to all the candidates, though. Boy, this was a nice situation. As Kathy said, I do hope they will get involved and, or come back next year, perhaps. Next up, we have 2 appointments for Bike Ped for the terms to run through June of 2025. We have Jay DiBiasio and Brian Fry. Do I have a motion to approve the appointments of both of them?
So moved.
I thought there was only one opening.
There's only one.
It says 2 appointments.
Yes,
Oh, so there's 2 opening?
yes.
Yeah.
Oh,
Oh.
I didn't understand that. I thought we
Oh,
could have
I thought
voted
it
on
was
that last
Jack.
week. Okay,
That's
sorry,
new. I thought it was on
misunderstood, yeah.
Well, then,
Easy to
this should be
do.
easy for you, huh?
So moved.
Second, anybody?
Second.
Okay, moved by Ann Harrison, this time seconded by Kathy Bellata. Roll call vote, John Round,
Yes.
Brian Solacey,
Yes.
Kathy Bellata, Ann Harrison,
Yes.
and Becky Jake says yes. It's unanimous. Thank you, Jay and Brian. Next up, we have CPC FinCom representative. So we need to ratify the appointment of Andy Olderman as FinCom's representative to the CPC for the term through June of 2024. And FinCom has voted to recommend Andy as their new representative. Any questions? Motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, moved by Ann Harrison, seconded by John Round. Roll call vote. Ann Harrison,
Yes.
Kathy Bellata,
Yes.
Brian Solacey,
Yes.
John Round.
Yes.
Becky Jake says yes, it's unanimous. Thank you, Andy. Okay, next up, we have discussion for the planning board application of Crocker's Boatyard.
In Manchester Marine both.
And Manchester Marine. I did know, there were a couple of items there. We received this, on the 13th? And comments are due by tomorrow?
No.
Okay,
So the planning board is a separate process from the state.
okay.
So they have when a Chapter 91 license is involved,
Mhm.
the planning board, or zoning bylaws say that the planning board will review and potentially issue a special permit for that project because it involves a Chapter 91 license. Chapter 91 license is a separate process. These 2 projects have not gone through that process yet. So there's another opportunity for you to make comment to the state, but before you right now is a request from the planning board to provide input to them if you choose, as they go through their special permit review.
If I may, the special permit is before the application for the Chapter 91 license?
Yes, it can be.
Have they applied for a Chapter 91
I
license?
the applicant, I don't believe they have,
Okay.
so.
Susan?
But not yet.
Oh, okay.
But we'll come to you. We do the board first. Okay. I did notice in our packet that I was missing some of the pages of the Crocker's Boatyard. Seemed to get the evens, the odds, not the evens. I have 1, 3, and 5. So there was just some information, and it was could have been what anyway. But there was some information that I would have liked to have read just in terms of helping form my questions. And if I could get the remainder of, so I have page 135, and then the attached copies, existing layout. I have the engineering attachments if there are 2.
Right, so separately, I sent you the completed drawings for both projects.
I had the same situation there, that I got the drawings, but not the actual. Did anybody else have any?
I'm with you.
Everyone had the same thing. Everyone got the same thing.
Right,
So I'm sure Susan or others could answer those questions and fill in those gaps.
okay. Is Susan here?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Oh, there you are. Okay, let me go back to this one.
So it might be helpful to perhaps have Brian start off with an overview
Okay,
of both projects.
Yeah.
And then you can ask questions, and either Brian or the applicant could answer those questions. That might be a good process for us.
okay, great. Hello, Bion again.
Hi, everybody. So for those unfamiliar with the two projects, Crockers is applying to expand on their facility. If you look at the drawings, it takes a turn toward Manchester Marine, so it does not conflict with the property line of the Lazans. It does not extend into the channel, and it does not cause anyone to lose a mooring that was in the cove. The cove's moorings have been converted to bow and stern, have been put in nice, neat rows. The access to the area is more than adequate, and that's really the well, I'll also speak to Manchester Marine. They're looking to add some fingers on the west end of their docks, extending out toward the channel, not into the channel. And then the bow and stern floats, although I don't think those are part of the discussion. Neither of these projects are impactful negatively to navigation in the harbor. The other project, which I don't think is before you, is beneficial to navigation of the harbor. And then as far as moorings go, none of the space that's being proposed for these docks are going to impact moorings. Moorings would not go in these spaces. We've just done the good hard work of correcting mooring issue in that area. So from my standpoint, neither project is negatively impacting either navigation or mooring holders, and ultimately navigation will improve.
Thank you, Bion. John, any questions for Bion?
Yeah, I've got a question. The revised engineering, did I see, well, Crocker wanted to add a few slips, and then in the revised one, I didn't see that. Are they or are they not?
So you should really ask Susan,
Okay,
the engineering firm. That's the drawings that I've seen. All I can say is the expansion of the facility does not impact navigation negatively, nor moorings.
okay, well, before I get to that, I'd perhaps like some contextual information with regard to slips in general, how they come to be. If you go back, I mean, all of these slips, and I've been here 20 years, and the slips that I see, they were there then, and I'm sure that they were there 20 years before that, but how did they come to be, you know, these various marina slips, or the other slips elsewhere in the harbor? Is that kind of like a grandfathered situation, or what?
Well, if you go back far enough, you would have seen slips just going in, piers going in front of properties. As years have passed, more regulations have gone into place. More communities have realized they needed to take an active role. That's why you see the necessity for permitting at the municipal, state, and federal level. So all of the piers and floats that go in today, John, the new ones, go through this whole regulatory process at all three levels. Some went in long before. As a matter of fact, if the floats at Tux Point hadn't been changed since 1969, then we could have rebuilt exactly as they had been before 1969. Everything was grandfathered in. So regulatory changes have driven what people can and can't do. And like all regulatory issues, they seem to become, a bigger part of putting these facilities in.
Okay, well,
I don't know if that answers the question.
in parts. I mean, I understand the role that you play in all of this, and you're dealing on behalf of the public with regard to improving the overall harbor. And you have moved around a number of docks, perhaps in part driven by some of the regulatory processes. All of the slips that are privately owned, and I assume the majority of those slips that we see in the harbor are privately owned, maybe all of them are. They all came to pass over the years, and I have to go back a ways because I don't recall a discussion where slips were added at any point in the past, say, few decades. Maybe Ann?
I don't know what you mean exactly by slips. If you mean floats,
Yes.
where a boat can tie up.
Yeah.
There are 2 new floats, one my next door neighbor and one the next door neighbor
Okay.
over. And they are on land that is owned by the property owner, that is to say, land between high water and mean low. There are 2 new floats on the eastern side of the harbor that I know of that were introduced in the past 15 years. And they, again, are aground at mean low water. So they are on their owner's property.
Okay. All right. It's not the case with these slips. These slips are,
These slips
I'm not
are,
calling them deep water, but they're
they're in
navigable
water that the town paid to dredge.
Navigable water for sure. Okay. That's it for now. I'm still cogitating.
Brian?
I'm just wondering what
Mine
you just
now?
said. No, at this point, I've listened to Bion, I want to hear what the engineers have to say.
Kathy?
I had a question, and it does relate to the dredging. We talked a lot about that last time. So if these slips were, these
Float?
floats were to be built on this public land, ocean land, whatever you want to call it, I thought we have a harbor dredging coming up again in the next few years, and how does that work? Would the property, Manchester Marine and Crocker pay the additional expense to get those out of the way so that we can properly like, how does that, just logistically, how does that work?
Right.
Yeah, I'll let Brian chime in here.
Sure. If there were dredging to be done over there, and Crocker would be responsible for removing their floats and the cost of pulling their pilings. The last dredging we did, Manchester Marine had dredging done in front of their facility and inside the drawbridge, and they did have to pay Croc Marine to pull. They removed their own floats, but the pilings actually had to be pulled out of the mud in order for the dredging to occur, and then the pilings were put back in.
Was that
To
all
support
at
the
Manchester
facility.
Marine expense?
Yes, it was. And in a harbor marine.
So I guess my just last clarification is the proposed projects are proposing to build these privately owned slips or floats on public lands. And what does so what I'm hearing from the harbor master is that the overall plan may improve the safety of navigation. That would be in the public interest, if I'm hearing that. But what other public, is there any financial public interest? I mean, the waterway fees aren't very high, so what would the town get if we give up public lands for private use?
In
So-
revenue,
Anything, I mean, one is safety navigation, is there anything that we would benefit from?
Greg?
So let's go have Ryan talk about the fees that are collected from each of the slips in the moorings. You able to speak to that, Brian? Ryan?
Yeah, that's correct. So we have the per foot fee of $12.50 per foot for the vessels, for the waterway fee. And then the boats at slips, at floats also pay the dredge assessment of $2.50 per foot.
Per
They pay the
season?
same rate to the town as the mooring holders. So that's the direct revenue to the town.
So just for clarification, those fees that you outlined, those are per season, right? So for the
Correct.
average, if there was a 25-foot boat, what is that, a few $100? What, I'm trying to,
And
what are we collecting? Because these private slips, they may be technically afloat, but I mean, they probably advertised as slips. They have to be generating thousands of dollars of revenue per slip per season?
So, yeah, every marina in New England, all the way up to Rockland, Maine, makes thousands of dollars annually per vessel that's tied up there. It is expensive to keep boats in the water, and it's also expensive to maintain facilities. So I do not know what Manchester Marine or Crocker or Inner Harbor or Pillhouse Square charges their customers. I only know that on top of that rate, they do also have to pay the town a total of $15 per foot.
Right, so from a waterways fee standpoint, it's in the hundreds of dollars, not the thousands for most people, probably.
For the town, right, to the town, it's hundreds of dollars annually, and then, multiplied by, we do it by, total number of feet
Right.
of vessels, so.
Got it, okay, thank you, those are my questions.
Ann?
If the floats, if we did not put in these fingerprint piers and floats, would that make the navigation worse?
Oh, certainly not, no.
So I'm having trouble seeing the public good in putting these in.
So I can't really weigh in on that. I'm not a resident here. I don't get to, my opinion doesn't really count when it comes to whether the town wants to approve this or not. It's just important to understand that from my standpoint, there's no negative from the harbor department's regulatory oversight of moorings and navigation.
Could we, can I ask another question? Is this something, since, boats and the fees, it's math, has FinCom taken a look at what the additional proposed revenue to the town would be? I mean, is there X number of additional vessels that could be accommodated? The slips are so big, you can estimate.
30 new boats can be accommodated between the two projects.
Yeah.
So if you're getting $300 per boat per year, so 30 times 300, so you're getting 90,000 a year.
9,000.
9,000.
Too many
If it was
zeros.
90, I'd
Too many,
prefer
yeah,
numbers.
too many zeros. So that's what the town gets directly, so I think you could argue that these are two pretty important
Right.
businesses in town. Whether or not you have a slip with the marina, you're relying on those marinas if you have a boat in the harbor typically, not everybody.
Yep.
People trailer their own boats, but probably the majority of the boats are being serviced and cared for by these two operations. So I think the long-term viability of the business is a public benefit. And I think that's something to take into consideration. Those 30 new boats, they're stopping at the gas station, they're going to Crosby's, so there's added economic vitality to the community that I think is also a benefit. That's something as stewards of the town we want to ensure continues. So I think there are a number of ancillary benefits, off-water benefits, as well as on-water benefits that the projects promote.
I would like to, these are large employers. And I just, Crockers has been there a long time.
And Manchester Marine
is
even
coming up.
longer.
But, and again, they do employ, they bring, I think, a lot to our community. I have some concerns with the fact that the select board weighs in on something like this when we really don't have any great working knowledge or understanding, and that bothers me a little bit about us weighing in on this. I would like to.
Brian had a comment, I think.
Oh, I'm sorry, Brian, go ahead. Thank you.
Right, so I will say one thing about the revenue. I foresee in very short few coming decades, money from state and federal funding sources going away as state and federal government start to deal with far larger waterfront issues than keeping Manchester Harbor open and viable for transient boaters, for its resident boaters, for any boaters. And the burden of maintaining its infrastructure is going to fall squarely on the shoulders of the community. And if you go back a little over a decade, there was not, by all appearances, a whole lot of motivation to have the harbor infrastructure maintained through the tax base. I don't love talking about money and generating money and revenue, but it is just a reality. To keep this harbor safe and operational, to have floats, docks that people aren't falling through when they walk on them. Up here at Reed Park that doesn't have a 25-year-old temporary repair to it, a fisherman's crane that isn't falling apart, disintegrating on top of the fishermen, seawalls that are starting to fail. You've got to generate the money in the harbor. Done a good job with Reed Park of generating revenue from folks who came and impacted the infrastructure but didn't pay into the waterway fund. The transient boaters have contributed now for 3 years, and $9,000 on top of $15,000 for kayaks, on top of $35,000 or $45,000 for Reed Park. This adds up over a decade. And when we need to dredge, when we need to replace a boat, when we need to repair a seawall, it's a lot easier to go and ask taxpayers for the balance or pay for a bond if we're actually generating the revenue on the water to pay for it.
So I 100% agree with that, generating more revenue from the harbor itself, and that's exactly kind of what I'm poking at. You know, if we're, if the town is only getting, 10% or less of what the private revenue is, I'm just asking questions. Why is that if we're gonna give up public land? Is there any way to have a different type of relationship where the town can benefit more? I don't know. To your point, I don't have the expertise to answer that question, but I do have the expertise to ask it. You know?
Now, I would like,
Excise tax is another increase in revenue. It's not a huge number again, but it's one more that goes into the pot. Every boat that calls Manchester home must pay an excise tax. And I have to thank Jack Burke for sending me a text reminding me of that.
Yeah. And it is set by the state, though. That's an
Correct.
amount that's set by the state. And the reason I'm poking at this so hard is if all of these, let's say we say yes, the planning board says yes, and all of these new slips wind up being used by Manchester residents, which would be great, they might not be shopping at Crosby's any more than they already are. You know, what additional benefit to the town would there be if people outside of Manchester use those slips? That is bringing more people to shop and eat in our town restaurants. So that makes sense to me. But if all the slips are gonna be used by Manchester residents, well, I don't know that the behavior or the increased benefit to the town will change. It'll benefit those residents, for sure. So anyway, those are my.
what I'd like to do right now, because it is 7:30 and we have some items that we're getting behind on a little bit and some people waiting. But I would like to ask, first of all, may I ask who you are?
Me? Sure. My name's Lindsay Banks.
And do you live in town?
I do. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm
That's-
here in support of Hope.
Oh, wonderful. Okay, thank you. I just didn't know if you were press. I saw you taking notes, and if you were press, I was just gonna have to enter that in. Sorry. Okay, so why don't we ask Susan St. Pierre? Did you want, without going on a long time, this is really just cursory informational at this point. Did you want to?
Well, I wasn't really planning on making a presentation, but, we're just to clarify that in Massachusetts, private property owners typically own down to mean low water. Beyond that, from mean low water out to the state limit, which is 3 miles, the water is owned by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And there are marinas up and down the coast that are in these waters owned by the state of Massachusetts, or the Commonwealth, or all of us. And because they're proposing an activity in these Commonwealth-owned waterways, we are required to get a Chapter 91 license. And the Chapter 91 license will review the plans and determine, first of all, they look at, is it a hazard to navigation? Is there a public benefit? And they'll take input from the planning board. This is the only community I've ever worked in where the planning board requires a special permit for projects that require a license. Typically, what you do is you send a copy of your Chapter 91 license to the planning board and the zoning board. Not the zoning board, but the building inspector. And they may or may not comment on the application. And they may elect to hold a public hearing, or they may elect not to hold a public hearing. So this is a little unusual. So to clarify the question at the beginning was, in terms of order of planning board, Chapter 91 license, whatever, this is an unusual situation. So we're going to the planning board first, before we go to submit our Chapter 91 license application. Because if we didn't go to the planning board, we'd still need to have that planning board notification signed by someone in the town. So in essence, the special permit, should we get it, sort of is that notification. We still have to have the form signed, but they require the planning board to do it. So it's part of the Chapter 91 process, but we haven't applied for those permits yet.
Thank you. And again, I think I don't understand the sense of us weighing in where we don't have any real deep understanding. Yes,
Just back to the expense.
Sorry, who is this?
yeah, would you just state your name,
I'm
please?
Skip Crocker, Sam Crocker, I own Crocker's Boulevard. Yes, the slips generate a lot of revenue, but there's construction, maintenance, electricity, water, insurance, snow and ice management in the wintertime. We provide parking for everybody, which water access, there's not a lot of parking around town. So for every slip customer, there's a parking spot or 2 parking spots. We also provide bathrooms and showers for those people taking some of the pressure off the town. It also helps with overhead. As you might notice, housing, living around here is very expensive. My employees can't live in southern New Hampshire and commute down here. So fees charged for slips offset some of that overhead cost with retirement, dental, health insurance, PTO, hourly wages. Not to mention, both Manchester and myself, we donate a ton of stuff back to the community. Final test, anytime he calls. I don't care if it's 2 o'clock in the morning, whatever, we're there. Whether it's schools, 4th of July, concerts in the park. The 2 businesses do a lot for this town. I think we give back a lot. So to look at that $15 foot fee and the excise tax fee is, no, it's not a lot. I think, in my case, I think it's $10,000 a season for my proposed slips, but the slip fees are expensive, but it's not like they're just sitting there. It's not like everything that's coming out of that slip is going in my pocket. There's a lot of construction, lumber costs, maintenance costs, pilings. You know, it's not just in the summertime, it's year round, those expenses are there. So it's expensive to maintain. And Manchester taxes are not the cheapest around either. Would you like to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, the only thing
Just
I'd
state your
elaborate-
name, please.
Sorry, I'm Nicolaides, I'm General Manager of Manchester Marine.
Do we get addresses as well?
Hmm?
Do we get addresses from people?
17 Ashland Avenue.
Is that your residence?
No, that is
It's where
General
he
Manager of
works.
Manchester Marine, I'm representing.
Yeah, I think because they're work addresses, they're not necessarily people who live in town, but they're the ones being questioned based on where they work.
I thought.
Do we have to have an actual, yeah, okay,
Do you want my?
No.
Okay.
thank you though.
I'm happy to do so if you'd like.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would just, in terms of service to the public, those employees that Skip mentions, they provide a service that even if you're not renting a slip or a mooring from Manchester Marine, you do need a place to have that boat fixed, to lay that boat up in the winter. And these employees just aren't anyone. They're skilled craftsmen that we need to hire, we need to keep them, and that does cost money. And I do think there's a benefit there regardless of if you're renting a slip from us. Oh, and yeah, we are the harbor's fuel dock and pump out too.
Well, the harbor master does provide a pump out.
He pumps
He
out
does,
and
but
pumps
man-
out
Their
afterwards.
There you go, yeah, because where's he gonna pump it out to? So he dumps it, no
Yeah, we
pun
offload
intended.
and we actually had that boat at one time. We turned it back over to the harbor master.
Thank you.
Also plow my own damn street.
I'm gonna say that's a DAM street. I'm just gonna go. I think Christina,
Christine Delicio, 6 Lincoln Ave. I just had a question, my apologies that we're late, but did you guys talk about a harbor plan at all? So
yes, we did cover that earlier,
Can you
and
do a little
happy
recap
to
or no? Okay, no,
happy
that's
to-
fine, okay. We'll go back
recap it
and look
later
at it, I
for
guess.
you. Any other questions at this point? I would like to get a little more information, if I could get those other pages, but I guess I'm just not clear on,
So there's no requirement for you to give comments.
Yeah.
So the planning board has this application before them, we're seeking input, but there is no requirement that you provide. If you feel like you don't have constructive comments to provide, that's fine. But this is an opportunity to provide
Right.
comment. So they asked if you had some comments, they would welcome those comments. It would help them in their process. But there's no requirement to do so.
Well, the comment I would like to make is I'm very appreciative of what you all do for the community. You bring a lot, you help out the community a lot, and the boat yards are a vibrant aspect to our community. I'm at a loss because I just don't know what we're,
That's the first.
no, it's not a first, but what a mini, anyway.
No, I just think that, yeah, I mean, I understand there's a double-edged sword here as it were. Okay? Public good, but I also think we have a responsibility to businesses in town. All right? They do generate income, they do generate jobs, and they are an asset to the community. And so that's my feeling in that regard. That's just our feelings. It doesn't seem to impact anything from what Greg says. Our feelings don't impact much, other than just some input.
Should we, if we have thoughts, should we just send them, or comments, send them to you and see where we go from there?
So, yeah, you could revisit this on the 7th. I believe you folks should take, rather than looking at, taking it up on the 8th.
Yeah, I don't,
We voted tonight to take it up on the 9th because of the election day, so we can
Oh, right,
push it
election is the
to
8th, right.
Wednesday.
So you will have another meeting prior to the planning board's meeting, and we can get a few more, we can provide the criteria that the planning board needs to review this under, if that would be helpful.
So I've got a question. Both of the well, they're not applicants, I guess. You are applicants before the planning board, I guess. But I mean, it's very coincidental. Both of you folks came together. Perhaps not coincidental, if in the sense, of course, you cooperate on a lot of fronts because you're right next to each other in town. And why now? I understand this is a business decision for you guys that you wanted to put in some more slips. You've got to improve your economic situation. Was there any reason why it's now and not, say, a few years ago, and why they happen to be at the same time?
I proposed mine originally in 19. And I can't remember if it was
When was that?
2019, when I did my
Oh,
last
okay,
expansion. I think
yeah.
we added 16 or 18 slips then.
Yeah.
We scaled it back because I can't remember if planning board or conservation commission felt it was too large a project for one time or something. So we scaled it back to what we did 2 or 3 years ago. The demand for slips, phone calls for slips every day is people want slips. And so trying to answer that demand, put 20 slips in where there was space for 3 moorings. It's just, nobody calls up looking for a mooring to rent anymore. They want slips. Convenience.
Mm-hmm.
okay, I'm gonna go ahead and move on at this point. And if everybody's amenable to our doing that. And Greg, could we just forward questions, comments to you and Debbie? And that way we can figure where we go from here. Is that all right?
I think it's good just to send our questions and comments to be consolidated and sent on to the planning board, and
Yeah.
we don't have to take a position one way or the other, but we've asked a lot of good questions and they may find them helpful.
Okay. All right. Thank you all very much for coming in and taking time to help us understand better.
No problem. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we now have, if everybody's all right with this, if we can No, I guess we go to policy review. Because that is what is on the agenda in case people have any questions about that. Sorry about that. Okay. Did everybody have a chance to read the policies put forward? All right, on political signs on public property. John Round, any thoughts?
No, I think I guess there were two options that were put down here. Right? And I'm an advocate, I don't think political signs should be on town property anywhere. I do not want to see a town common that is cluttered up kind of like a billboard. We've got a very beautiful town common, and I just think it's not something that we needed. So that's my position on the political signs on property. The other one, which was a process activity, and I think
Policy of policies.
policy of policies and the process of managing them. I think the copy we went over that, I can't remember when, but.
Yeah, this is second reading of policy of policies.
Yeah.
Thank you to Ann and John for doing this continued work on the policies. Brian?
I'm with John, I don't think that political signs belong on town property. I mean, it's gonna end up being a wasteland of signs.
Kathy?
100% agree.
Ann?
Are we going to enforce it, or are we just going to let people who don't pay attention to the rules put signs wherever they want?
Well, please take them down if signs are, if they're not where they're supposed to be, they.
That has not been my experience.
Okay. I have sort of ambivalent feelings on this. I don't want to see them all over. However, public land, it's town land, it's public land. And I think historically, precedent has been set not to have signs on the public land. But to Ann's point, if we're going to do that, we need to have it enforced or properly adhered to. Did I see a hand raised? No, okay. Didn't know if there was a comment.
Hope Bucci has her hand up.
Okay.
Let's
Before
see
I go to Ann first, I want to finish the rest of the board. Hope, I'll be with you in just a moment. Ann, what
Thank
did you
you.
say?
As I said, I have often seen political signs left on what is parks and other public land. I have occasionally confiscated them myself.
Ooh, that's
Um, And I can go with either of these options perfectly happily, but I would like to see a commitment on the part of the police or the DPW or whoever
consistently.
One question, so when we're talking public lands, we're talking about town-owned property.
Correct.
Because I have seen a lot of signs on MECT property or the trustees, not town-owned land, they are owned by other groups,
The
right?
MECT doesn't own as much as you think it does.
Powder House, do they own the Powder House?
I think the town owns
the town.
The town
Town
owns,
owns
okay.
that.
And the
So I'm
town,
right there with you,
the town owns
just to clarify, okay.
the land around Shingle Place Hill, and it's in the care of the MECT.
Got it, okay.
Okay.
So I don't know if that contributes to any confusion, because I know I was certainly confused about ownership, and if we do have a policy that does not allow political signs on town property, we may want to clarify what those town properties are.
Okay, well, if you don't own it or your friend doesn't own it, you don't put a sign on it.
Well,
So,
Once again, you know,
Yeah.
I'm wondering if some of these people thought, oh, that's MECT property, it's not town-owned, so I'm gonna stick a sign there. I don't know, but I just thought I'd bring it up.
okay, so this is the first reading of this one. Let's see, any other comments from the board before I?
Can we get a sense of which option we should pursue?
I'm interested in no signs option, and I think that's what everybody else
No
said
sign,
at this
no.
point.
Okay.
Okay.
There was one comment, I think, Greg, you made in your comments that signs, well, that's irrelevant. 2x3 signs, that's not an
Right,
irrelevant,
right.
irrelevant
Well,
comment.
that's only if you're gonna allow them.
Yes, that's correct.
Then you could exclude certain properties.
No,
You know,
No,
I think it becomes confusing.
no,
yeah. Hope, state your name and address, please.
Sure. Thank you. Hope Wabuchi, 2 Putnam Court. Can I just ask, for the record, what is considered a political sign?
That's a good question. And go ahead and put your hand down. Thank you, Hope.
It's a sign advocating a candidate or a policy.
Okay. So
Thank you.
for the first, this first reading, do we want to go for second reading with no signs allowed? So for option 2, and clarify, any political signs on town property will be removed and destroyed by the town police? Is that, I mean, I think we need to say who does that. Because technically, people, just anybody shouldn't go willy-nilly removing signs, even if they are on public property.
Right, I mean, typically the police will bring them here and people can pick them up.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, we don't keep them forever, they don't come by with it.
Okay, so why don't we just say removed?
that you want to say who's supposed to, who has the
Right.
responsibility
And that's,
in this copy, but, you know,
Yep.
police take notice? I don't know,
okay.
By the police department?
yes.
Do we need to talk to Todd about that first?
We certainly can between now and the second reading.
Yeah, okay.
It's fine.
All right, and will you reach out to Todd, or do you want me to do that?
It's easy for me to, sure.
Okay. All right, so we will go to the second reading at our November 7th meeting, all right? Okay. And any modifications to the, or concerns with policy and policies which we've already reviewed once, the second reading? And if not, may I have a motion?
A motion to adopt that policy, on policies.
Second.
Okay, moved by John Round, seconded by Kathy Bellata. Roll call vote. Ann Harrison?
Yes.
Kathy Bellata?
Yes.
Brian Solacey? John Round?
Yes.
Becky Jake says yes, it's unanimous. We have a policy on policies. Okay, moving right along. And apologies, Hope, that we're 25 minutes behind. Did everybody get the chance to review the Manchester by the Sea Human Rights and Inclusion Committee draft proposal by Hope Wabuchi?
Yes.
Okay. Let's see. Hope, did you want to introduce this for us, to us?
Sure, thank you. Through you, please, to the rest of the select board. My name is Hope Wabuchi. I reside at 2 Putnam Court. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. And I thank you so much and recognize that I'm presenting this request as a person of privilege living here in Manchester by the Sea. So I'm also the founder and president of North Shore Pride, which is a nonprofit organization with a mission of education and advocacy on behalf of LGBTQ plus persons here on the North Shore, having been in existence for 12 years now. My reason for bringing this before the select board is that I've noticed there have been, some incidents throughout the North Shore and also in Manchester by the Sea, where I think issues of civil rights and human rights have come to fruition and come to attention. And so I did a little bit of research and noticed, and again, I'm not an expert in this area, please, but noticed that the majority of the towns surrounding Manchester by the Sea have human rights or human rights and inclusion committees or boards as part of their town government. Those include Hamilton Wenham, Ipswich, Danvers, Gloucester, Beverly. I think the only one closest to us that does not, to my knowledge, is Essex. We are a town, according to the 2020 census, and we've since grown since then of about 5,400 or so residents, the majority of whom, over 5,000, are identify as white or Caucasian. And I've made note also throughout this meeting this evening, several references to diversity and the need for diversity. Thank you, Catherine, for that, I noticed, as well as some other select board members. So the purpose of this committee or board, however the select board deems fit to address it, would be to develop a group of persons whose job is to interface, or whose mission is to interface with other entities within the town, as well as other boards and committees, to ensure that we uphold civil and human rights of the residents of Manchester by the Sea. So that's pretty much it in a nutshell. I know that time is of the essence for all of you because of the late hour, but I'm happy to answer questions, and I thank Lindsay Banks, who's there in person, to advocate for this as well. So as you can see, I outlined the duties of the committee, and this is all a draft. My thought would be that persons, the select board would appoint persons to this committee or board, however you want to name it, and then we would look at this as just a proposed draft. I would imagine that there would be edits, but of course, we know that the pain of preparation is much less the pain of regret, and we would come before the select board again with a final version. I'm including myself, but certainly that does not need to be the case. That would be up to the select board.
Thank you very much, Hope. This is, I think, something that could only bring positive aspects. I would say right now that we have been looking at boards and committees and trying to find ways to actually clarify missions of the boards as well as current applicability. And perhaps even reduce some of them. Why don't we go around to the different board members and see if anybody has any questions or thoughts at this point? Anne?
This is an area where I think we do not have an overlapping committee.
Yep. Kathy Bellata?
Yeah, so I am 100% in favor of this. I've seen these types of committees in a corporate environment, and they make a huge difference. So I'm a big fan of what you're trying to do here, Hope. My caveat is what Becky just said, that I think the select board just needs a little bit of time to take our governance work one or two steps further, so we can provide and support this committee in a very clear and concise way. We've got a little governance work to do, but as soon as we are done with that, I would really welcome this, because I agree with Anne, there's no overlap that I can see at all right now, but I do think we need to have a little bit more governance work done.
And there would even be some good
I did review your committee list, and I didn't see anything that personally myself, but I defer to the board certainly.
Great.
And there could be many nice tie-ins with the school and other activities in town. Brian?
I applaud the approach and the intent. I'm reluctant to add another layer of government. I think we have a lot of good groups in town that work outside of town government. I think sustainability, I think the Mothers Club, the boosters, I think that this committee, while I support it, I don't think it necessarily needs a town seal next to its name. And I would even sit on this committee, okay, outside of town government, okay? But I think we've discussed this in the past. We're trying to slow the wheels down, just make government a little smaller, and those are my feelings at this point.
Thank you. John Brown?
Yeah. Hope, again, I laud your effort here, and I know that you're certainly a leader in any of a number of initiatives. Your persona certainly leads you in that direction. A question that I'm going to ask, even though you, I guess, indirectly addressed it when you spoke. You said there have been a number of instances that have kind of prompted you to do this, because I was wondering, is this in response to some specific event or group of events? And I'm not aware of events. I don't know if anybody else is in our committee, but maybe there are in the schools, and I think the schools are probably set up to address this because there's a bigger concern, I think, for these things in the schools, just because you're dealing with adolescents, and a lot of things happen with adolescents. But are these instances that you don't have to go into detail, but you've seen several of them over the past, several years, I guess, that you felt should be addressed through a committee such as this?
Yes, absolutely, and I think, and I understand also to Brian's point. I understand your point about limiting committees and all of that. I actually sit on several other committees in the town. However, what I would say to that is, in the issue of inclusion and civil rights and human rights, I think having a committee that's backed by the town government speaks volumes as to someone who's feeling not included, to policies, to zoning changes, to planning board changes, to school board changes, to the fact that the majority of our town is not diverse. I think, having a town government-backed committee specific to this mission speaks volumes. And there have been several incidents, and I can, I'm happy to go through them, but that was the impetus, and seeing all the zoning board changes, seeing the affordable housing issues that are in town, following those issues, diversity in our harbor and assignment of slips, and it goes on, but that would be my response and rebuttal to that concern, Brian. Thank you.
Thank you, Hope. What I think at this, I would like to reiterate that I think reiterate Kathy's comment about needing a little more time in terms of governance. I did have some thoughts regarding the duties that you've put forth. But I do think we would need to work more on the governance and then come back to this. This is not getting shelved. And before we go on, I'd like to recognize Lindsay Banks.
Yep, so I'm Lindsay Banks. I'm at 44th Street. So I guess I just wanted to give a little more context to what Hope is saying, because to answer your question, John, I have heard some, I've lived in town for 5 years, and in only the last 2 years really kind of gotten engaged with work in town around being as inclusive as possible because of specific families that I knew through acquaintances sharing specific experiences with me around how their child is being treated in town, both in school and around town. Specific people's property have been damaged. And some of these are things the police would deal with, but they are town-wide issues. Access to the playground and can all children of all abilities access the playground? That is, even there's prayer at town meetings, that bothers people in town who don't identify as Christian. I mean, even if you look at the seal that's behind you, I don't know who is in that boat, but it feels like it might be indigenous people perhaps greeting that boat, right, and the town hymn. So in my mind, it's about kind of having a committee that can step back and ask those questions and come at how the town functions with that lens of just from a base. It's nothing radical. It's nothing. It's just, are we welcoming people? Are we a town that is inclusive of people? And if we're not, how can we do better? And so, Brian, I actually do have something in the works here to have kind of an ad hoc community-based organization that I've been working on the past couple of years, and I hope to launch within the next year. And I would love and totally invite you to be a part of that, even in a leadership role perhaps. And anyone else here too has been functioning mainly on an email list, but really just about raising awareness about what the schools are up to, what the town is up to, what are the good things that are happening. The schools just brought in a food truck for accessible access to healthy, fresh foods, a mobile food pantry. So yeah, that is happening, but I also think and feel strongly there is a place for this for the reasons that Hope mentioned, which is just the legitimacy of the work. And I think the school districts would benefit from having the town back, Manchester and Essex also back their efforts to get ahead. I think it's about getting ahead of these issues. Like, do you want to wait for Manchester by the Sea to make national news because this terrible incident happened where blah, 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 right? Or do you want to get ahead of those issues and be proactive about it? That's kind of the question in my mind when I think about this committee. Thank you.
Lindsay, thank you very much. So we will come back to this, but I think for right now, if everybody is in agreement that we continue the work on governance and then come back to the Human Rights and Inclusion Committee.
Can I just ask one question, and that is that the board, the select board, thank you so much, Lindsay, that the select board maybe just beg the question of Hamilton, Wenham, Ipswich, Danvers, Gloucester, and Beverly, why it is they voted to have town-backed human rights and inclusion committees. I would ask that. And when is the last time Manchester celebrated Pan American Day, Juneteenth, Chinese New Year, Mid-Autumn Festival, Holy Week? I can't remember, and I've been here since 1964. So I just ask you to, and I thank you so much for your consideration. I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you, Hope, very much. Thank you for bringing this to the board. Okay. So at this point, we won't take action on it, but we'll come back to this as something critical and important. Okay. All right, next up we have approval of the special town meeting warrant for November 14th. Okay, and you all had your meeting, the planning board did. Christina or Mary, are there any changes that would need to be made aware?
There were changes made tonight.
Say it again.
There were changes made tonight. I don't have the list.
Okay, are they de minimis or are they changes that would impact
The biggest
generality?
goals
Yeah.
removed the by right and went reverted to special permit.
Okay, so the wording will change, but we're still. Right, Brian?
Well,
Are you misbehaving over
no,
there?
just, I've sat on enough of these, special permits for swimming pools. That's all.
Yes, I remember those. I did some
We
too.
were kind of excited about them going by right.
Yes, okay. Greg, why don't I actually turn this back over to you right now?
So the question will become whether or not the changes that the planning board did this evening impact the articles, or will they impact the motions being made? So two separate topics. One are the actual detailed language changes proposed for the amendments versus what is in the articles. The article is a summary. It doesn't have all the details, so
But the Article 1 does allow swimming pools.
By right.
By right.
right,
And
so
So the wording is changing, but the article itself would still, right?
so it may. So what I'm suggesting is that,
We're not approving the final wording.
but what I'm saying is you probably need to meet on Thursday to give final approval to the warrant. So I think it would be helpful tonight to get a sense that these are the articles that you want to propose, and B, what order you want to have them appear on the warrant.
So then for our meeting, do we need to, it's 4 to 6 right now. Are we going to want to make that a longer meeting? I think we're going to have to.
Yeah, I would really hate to
You don't wanna
continue
rush
to
this.
rush our
Right.
governance work,
Right.
keep pushing it out, so.
Right, so if you want to do that governance work from 4 to 6, and then you take this up at 6 to 6:30 or something like that, I think that would be.
If that room is available still, the room after, we just need to make
Yeah,
sure
I'm pretty
that,
sure it is.
okay,
We'll double check.
and that's in 7?
Right.
Okay. All right.
Is that the only major change? Is that the only major change that you're aware of? That you recall?
Or maybe a better question is, when can we get the final wording so we know what we're going to be talking about Thursday
So
evening?
I'm assuming we will have that tomorrow, based
Okay.
on tonight's discussion.
Okay, so we
I
can,
was-
We don't have it either. We didn't have the final wording.
Okay.
who's got the ball?
So the ball, my understanding is the ball is in Sarah's lap.
Sarah's court,
I'm
okay.
assuming that was what was decided tonight. I have to say, I wasn't at the end of your meeting, but I'll make that assumption.
Okay.
And that we will have that and have a revised wording if, as necessary, to the articles. But I still think it'd be productive for you to talk about, in general, the approach you want to take, the order you would see as being productive. And even though some details perhaps have been modified this evening by an earlier meeting, the general ideas are still here.
And you had mentioned possibly a change in the order of some of the.
Right, you may want to
items,
take the petition article and the two money articles first,
Mhm.
and then get into the zoning. So,
Can I ask Mary and Christina, do you have another meeting planned to discuss this?
No, we voted tonight.
right, so, yeah, it's
I
fine.
think the final biggest question is, and we heard they met with town council today, the language in 40A is pretty clear. So to me, I think what is 50% and what needs 2/3 majority to be voted, and what that looks like if something's changed on the floor is a question. I think the biggest one was addressing was ADUs. If someone changes that on the floor, to me, that's just, you're bringing something completely new to the public that we've never talked about. And there's certain second parts of 40A, right, it says if you change parking requirements or do this or do that, it's only simple majority. And I'm not clear and I'm not convinced, and I wasn't part of the town council conversation today. So to me, I still don't have a clear answer. What articles are 50% and what are 2/3?
And for
So town council's
clarification,
advice was that all the articles as currently proposed
Yep.
require a 2/3 majority vote. There was the Housing Choice Act that was passed.
Yep.
that allowed a very limited number of articles for zoning to be passed on a simple majority, not 2/3. What Christina's referring to is that if you followed the definition that the state has for ADUs, then you could potentially have a simple majority vote on that provision. But at least, assuming you didn't change it tonight, the provision that is being proposed does not follow that state definition, so it takes a 2/3 vote.
Okay, and we have Alan on, but I just want to be, for clarification, Debbie, Christina Delicio from the planning board. Okay, Alan, good evening, Alan.
Hello, Becky.
How's your puppy?
He's good, thanks.
Good. So we're just jumping into this now. Did you have any thing you wanted to say in terms of Christina's concern?
Well, the town council and I are in agreement that as currently framed, all of the zoning articles require a 2/3 majority. The discussion that the planning board had was, would it be possible for a floor amendment to be offered that would change the wording of particularly the ADU article in such a way that it might shift from a 2/3 majority to a simple majority? And that wouldn't be a simple amendment, but it would be possible. I don't want to make this more complicated than it needs to be. Just go back to town council and I agree right now that as currently framed, they're all 2/3.
Okay.
So like any town meeting, we rely on the moderator and town council to guide in terms of what quantum of votes are needed. And so that's something that we would do in this case as well.
Right. Thank you, Alan.
And ultimately, if there were an amendment offered on town meeting floor, it's up to me to sort it out. With help from town council, obviously.
Thank you. So, does Alan have a copy of the warrant as well then? Or the proposed warrant?
I have a copy of the warrant as it was written before tonight's planning board meeting. There were a couple of changes approved by the planning board. I took reasonable notes, but not exact notes, so I don't have the exact changes for the warrant as they voted on it.
And we can finalize those on Thursday, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, you have until the end of the month, but it would be the sooner the better.
Okay. And?
Yeah, let me just underscore
Alan.
it,
Yeah.
the sooner the better, if I could.
Yeah.
The sooner we can get to the voters exactly what we're gonna be asking them to vote on, the better.
Absolutely. And so we can do that on Thursday. So we can get the wording as
Right.
soon as it's
Can we say we're gonna get the final wording no later than tomorrow?
at some point tomorrow.
I mean, it's a 24-hour day, so
Yeah.
as midnight, whatever.
Yep.
Or do you need till noon on Wednesday? I mean, I'd like to have a clear time
Right.
by when we can expect, so I'm not looking at my inbox, waiting for it.
I would say by the end of the day tomorrow, you should.
Okay, great, thank you.
Okay.
Okay, is that, the
It'd be very similar to what you have,
Okay.
with some, perhaps some minor tweaking. But again, I would like us to discuss at least the order,
Yeah.
to nail that down, and make sure you're comfortable with the plan. And Alan has been working with Dr. Hahn and talking about using the auditorium and having a requirement for masking in the auditorium, and we can use every seat. But those who don't want to wear a mask, then we could have a separate room where people would be spaced out.
Yeah, I think the bottom line heads up for tonight, and I can't go into real details yet. I did talk with Dr. Hahn Friday after I got back from the Netherlands on Thursday, and contrary to what I had thought, looking at the information on the town website, which looks like if you look at just the Board of Health reports, the numbers of COVID infections are very low and stable. But what Martin told me is that those data are not truly reliable because they only reflect PCR tests, and virtually everybody is now using home antigen tests. And those are showing a spike. Perhaps more significantly, the data on viral concentrations in wastewater for the towns north of Boston are spiking, according to Martin, dramatically. And that's a kind of early signal that things are going to get worse. So he, and I believe the Board of Health ultimately will agree, are recommending that we follow pretty much the same kind of COVID precautions we have had in the past few meetings. Probably that means, I think based on my conversations with Martin, that looks like we would use the auditorium for the primary venue with every seat occupied or potentially occupied, but everyone there being required to wear a mask. For those who choose not to wear a mask, I think we will probably be in the gym, that they will be in the gym with social distancing. And that will mean separate sound systems, assistant moderator, excuse me, assistant clerk in the gym. We can anticipate, I think, that because we will be in 2 rooms, assuming that we have enough people to be in 2 rooms, that will slow the progress of the meeting because it just takes time to coordinate back and forth between the 2 rooms, count the votes in both places, and do all that's necessary to accommodate people in 2 rooms. And so my expectation is that we'll probably need 2 nights for the meeting.
So with the, when you say the masks required, it'll be the guidelines of covering your nose and mouth, and the enforcers of that will be the police?
Well, in the first instance, the checkers, the police, if someone becomes obstreperous, we will offer people who choose not to wear masks to be seated in the gym with social distance between them. So I wouldn't think that people would react obstreperously to that, since they'd have a choice if they chose not to be masked, but you never know.
Okay. Thank you, Alan.
I should say that's my thinking about it right now. More needs to go into it. I do know that both the gym and the auditorium are available for both the 14th and 15th. And I'll be checking on sound systems and other mechanical systems next week.
All right, any comments from the board? Questions on the procedures that Alan has gone over just now?
Just one question. I kind of lost track of, how did we get from 1 night to potentially 2 nights?
Simply based on the warrant and the fact that I think being in 2 rooms adds at least an hour to the time the meeting would ordinarily take. Based on my experience, the time it takes to go back and forth, count votes in both places, recognize speakers in both places, coordinate between me and the assistant moderator, all of that adds time. And I think we can anticipate a fairly significant amount of discussion on some, not maybe all, of the zoning amendments. I think we can expect a fair amount of discussion on the citizen petition article, and probably not so much on the 2 money articles. So my plan is to be ready for 2 nights in 2 rooms. If we get a surprise and we can be in 1 room and finish in 1 night, so much the better. But the consequences of not having enough seats or not having a room for a second night if we need it, the consequence of that is that I'm required by statute to adjourn the meeting, which I don't think any of us wants.
No.
Thank you.
Any other board member comment? Christina, you had,
I heard 2 rooms. I thought it was at the Memorial School.
No.
It's at the high school.
the middle high school auditorium.
Middle high school auditorium and gym, most likely.
Okay.
Is there a time?
6:30.
I think previously the board had voted on 7 o'clock.
That's what we'd done in the past, but what was presented said 6:30. It was a little, I was a little surprised by that, but so will we,
Just trying to give a little more time to
yeah.
give us a
yeah.
chance to get it done in one night.
Yep.
But it's obviously, it's up to you. It's your-
6:30, no,
it's your warrant.
I think that half hour could be very helpful. Okay.
Either one is fine with me.
I'm sorry, Alan?
Either one is fine with me. I'll be there for the whole meeting whenever it starts.
And you'll be in the country, so.
I just wanted to, for whatever reason, I also had Memorial School on my calendar, so, maybe I must have just typed it wrong.
So I think some early
Some early.
communications talked about Memorial School, but
So it's at the high school.
more recent ones have said to be announced. or to be
Yeah,
determined.
no, that wouldn't be good.
So-
Okay, so we are at. So it's 6:30. All right, do we want to go over each item on the warrant, or has everybody taken a look? Actually, before we do that, does anybody wish to change the order?
If I think the articles from the planning board are in an order, in a deliberate order, so that
Right.
the changes are incremental. And I think it would be ill-advised of us to change any of those.
I don't mean
Whether-
those orders. I mean the other items.
Whether we take the 2 money articles first and then hope everybody survives to the recall article, or put the recall article first, I don't care.
Okay.
If I understood the result of the planning board meeting correctly, they decided to reverse the orders of Article 5 and 6.
Oh.
Greg, is that your recollection too?
That's correct.
Christina said yes to that.
Okay.
Actually, she said that's correct. So, okay.
So those will those get then renumbered? 6 will become 5 and 5 will become 6, okay.
That's my understanding.
Okay. John, any comment regarding non-planning board article order?
No, the comment you made with regard to the last couple of warrant articles going first, that's fine.
I'm agreeing.
Same.
Okay.
So put those first and then do the zoning.
Yep.
Yep.
All 3?
Yes. Okay. So we will
So
have.
the only other big issue for now is are you wanting to go ahead with all the articles that the planning board has proposed? Is there any article that you would not want to advance?
Before we go to that, regarding Article 15 and the ambulance.
Yes.
FinCom is not in support of asking for that money. They wanted to see if we could have it, the engine replaced,
Right,
correct?
so that's why the wording says for ambulance rebuild or to purchase.
Okay, do we have, or are we going to come up with a dollar amount or?
Yes.
Okay, all right, I just wanted to be, okay. So we will do
So that
15.
could be amended significantly downward
Right.
if there's a viable rebuild option.
So we will take 14, 15, 16 and make those 1, 2, 3. Is that correct?
So, just for clarity, that would then impact the numbering of all of the planning board
Mhm.
articles
Right.
when they have ancillary documents
Right.
that would all have to be updated.
Yes.
Have those, so those have not, nothing's gone to print yet.
No, I'm just saying, there is stuff on the, it's not just a matter of renumbering the articles, it's all the stuff we saw at last week's open
Yeah,
house, you know, the table, if there were charts that reference article numbers.
They've already done that to themselves by changing 5 and 6.
Okay, that's true,
however.
You're
So
right.
in your words, deliverables, is that what they are?
Okay, back to Greg's question. Other than renumbering of those articles, did anybody have any questions with what we have before us, knowing that we are going to finalize wording Thursday? Okay, John Round, no. Brian
No.
Solacey, no. Kathy Bellata, no. Ann Harrison.
No.
And Becky Gates, no. Okay. Do you need us to do a conditional? Okay.
No.
So,
No.
okay,
Marching orders are received and we'll
right.
get it finalized on Thursday.
Alan, anything else?
No,
Ooh. You're out
just so
before
I have the
9.
time right, is your meeting on this 6:30 on Thursday?
No, we would come to this at 6.
Yeah.
We might
6.
take a brief break, right? So,
Why don't we come to this at 6:30? That will not, if our governance runs a little over.
good idea, good idea. Yes, Alan, 6:30.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, thank you. Thanks,
We
Alan.
will have any other ones on Thursday.
So we need to get the room set up, Zoom and all that. Extended,
just-
that'll be a whole separate meeting?
Just want to make sure that no one else is hoping to get into room 7
Ah,
at around 6:30. I was pretty comfortable until 6:30, but whoops. where did I go? Very quickly here.
okay. We are 17 minutes behind, caught up a little bit. Water ban discussion. I don't see Chuck or Nate on.
Yeah, no, we're good. We're good.
Oh, that's, the time is okay?
Time's okay.
Okay. I know we are still at a level 3 drought, and anybody who drives around sees that we still have a lot of lack of,
We have a lot of brown grass.
well, brown grass, ponds are low. The state says that if you're in a level 3 drought, you should ban all non-essential use.
And we have a process set up, I think, for people who think who have a special need to go to the DPW. So why don't we just leave it the way it is? Somebody has a special need, they go to the DPW says, okay, go ahead.
Okay, I know, Jack was concerned about, people who want to haul and wash their boats. Then they go to the DPW.
Can I ask a question? Just so I know how to answer the question when it's been asked to me on more than one occasion last week. This water ban, why are we flushing hydrants? I get that question a lot.
And the answer to that is that there are minerals that get flushed out with the water.
I just want to know what the
Right,
Okay, what
that's,
the
and,
official
and,
statement would be.
right, and they can't really tell the level of the minerals content, because they just don't know at what time, what point in the flushing you're going to have a concentration.
So does it have to be done in October?
Well, they have to keep the lines flush so that you don't get a buildup in the water lines. Part of the problem is, and then to, because I did get that information from Chuck, and what happens, and this, to collect the water, it is released at how, what is it, Greg, 200 gallons a minute or something? It's a massive amount, and to collect that in the vehicles would slow the process down significantly, and increase the cost, not necessarily things that we should be discounting at this point, and especially going forward if we have continued drought issues. What are the uses for the water that has excessive minerals? So I don't have an answer for that one.
So, yeah, it's, you know,
No, the question's been asked.
it's a balancing act.
Where's this water coming from that they're using to flush the lines with?
Well, it's just,
The
it's
hydrants,
good water.
right out of the,
Okay.
It's good water. It's the same water you're drinking out of your tap. It has to be.
No, again, the question's been asked from 2 or 3 different people.
No, I
Yeah.
understand. It's a
Yeah.
valid question.
it's a good
because
question.
Why are we?
You know, I was asked also, I also did email Chuck, I did not get an answer, but maybe that's because he would have I would not have liked the answer that he would have given me. I said, so how much water are we losing in this compared to the consumption on a monthly basis or a weekly basis? I mean, you drive by, and of course, they do this at night, maybe for a reason.
Do it for night so it doesn't affect pressure during the.
Well, yeah, that and other things, it's just not as much noise, you don't get as many questions for sure. But I agree, the water pressure issue is probably the,
So we are required to estimate the gallons that are being used.
I'm interested in that number.
So we can get that number. Historically, we have that number.
Okay,
And we can provide that.
I would like, I asked Chuck that and I didn't get a response, and that was,
You know, compared to a normal summer use of irrigation, it's a fraction.
well.
It's a fraction of that.
Okay, and that would be supportive.
But yeah, we're required to track that use. So he has that data.
Okay, good.
I'm not looking to be a fly in the ointment here, I'm just looking to have.
Yeah.
a
No,
theoretical-
I think
No,
we all get
that's-
asked questions.
You're
Yes,
asked
yes,
questions
questions,
and you want to be able to give an answer. No, that's good.
I just think
Becky,
clarifying what Ann mentioned on the process that we agreed to, and I think it was the meeting, Becky, that you were not there. I thought we discussed businesses could bring forth. I don't know that we actually said that a private resident,
Okay.
you know, because I just don't know if Chuck is gonna want, you know, 100
Everybody in
emails.
town.
I gotta wash my boat, I gotta flush the engine.
It's
you
in
know.
full swing right now. This is, the horses out of the barn on that one a little bit.
I think so. And then, you know, I'm not a fan of rules that can't be enforced. And it's October, everybody's taking their boat out unless we want the engines to go bad.
Again, it's not a huge amount of water.
I think we ought to let
I would
them do it.
encourage you just to allow
Yeah, I agree.
allow that under the water ban.
I mean, we
because-
allow washing cars with the bucket. I think, you know, it's a one-time thing. It's not,
It's a one-time
it's a
event.
one-time thing. Let people wash their boats and flush their engines.
Specifically to boats and engines and not,
Well, it is hulls,
I mean, you know,
but that's a pressure deal, and that's not a high volume water, that's a high pressure water.
whatever
It's
people,
not
I
a big
mean,
volume of water.
whatever
It
people
all
need to
adds
do to
up.
get
It does,
to the end of the season, though. I mean, otherwise, I mean, these are big investments that people have, and
yeah.
Well,
I don't know.
So, in talking to Chuck and Nate about it, from a volume perspective, they were not worried about this one-time seasonal use of water. So, Sarah Mellish has her hand up.
okay. Sarah Melish.
Thank you. So I think it's a little incongruous that I'm not able to water my shrubs to help the environment, but the neighbors next door were allowed to tap into a hydrant to water down a house that was demolished. We need to be considering the overall ecosystem and the need to retain shrubs and trees. Thank you.
I'm confused because I thought we did allow.
Before we do that, Sarah, did you give your address?
Oh, sorry, 11 Bennett Street.
Thank you. Okay,
So
and put your hand down.
Yeah, my confusion is I thought we did allow
Yeah.
for
Drip-
residents
hand
drip
watering,
irrigation
drip
for
irrigation.
shrubs and trees.
Hand watering and drip
Drip irrigation
irrigation,
are
that
allowed.
was on level 2. So level
Right, but a
3.
portion of my land is drip irrigation and a portion of is unfortunately not. So I cannot run my irrigation system to save my shrubs because I have no lawn, but yet the neighbors next door tapped into the hydrant to water down the demolition of a house.
That doesn't.
Thank you, Sarah. Well, that's
Oh, yeah.
part of that's coding, you have to do that. Sarah, if you could lower your hand, please.
Yep.
But to Sarah's point, consistency, and I do have a problem with saying, sure, go ahead and use it for your boats, yet you can't take care of your very expensive investment of landscaping. We are in a drought. I know it's hard to see that right now with the rain. It is a level 3 drought, and the state has guidelines for that. And I think that if we have allowed people to go to the DPW, that's what they do, even if there is a rush of boats for a little while. You know, if it's being more closely monitored and not just having a hose down at the town, okay, what's that thing called? Ramp, thank you. The town ramp and a hose that just runs. Okay, John Round, thoughts?
I think we ought to be, when did you put an article in the paper, when was it? Back in the end of July? Actually, it was your article as to what could and could not be done based upon our discussion.
Yeah.
I think we have to revisit that and be more specific again, because the seasons change, just like we're talking here, and I think we've got to be a bit more specific about what's allowed. And what Sarah has said, I understand. She's got an automatic drip system. That's fine. The other stuff, she's either going to hand water, and probably doesn't have enough time to do that. So she's got a problem. And I think we have to have some clarifications for that. Something like that, I am okay with. Hand watering bushes.
We allow that now, so I don't
Yeah.
understand what the change is.
Yeah.
That's my confusion.
I think drip versus hand watering, maybe. Is the terminology hand watering now?
No, we allowed drip, we added drip at the subsequent meeting.
I know that. Is that the same as it? But
That
hand
was
watering.
for drought, that was for drought 2. Drought 3 is different guidelines from the state. We don't have to do that.
So
That was,
just from my confusion, so what you're saying
I could be
is that
confused.
when we outlined our previous guidelines and then amended it to include the drip irrigation, we were only at stage 2 at that time, and since we moved to stage 3, we have not changed anything?
we've not changed what our guidelines are. We are in a level 3 drought right now. We've not modified, so we're
Okay.
still, we've
That's
not
what I was
said,
So we are allowing hand watering.
Yes.
and drip at this
irrigation.
point. I'm just stating what
And-
the state says. I'm
So
stating.
I'm okay with that, maintaining that then, and then maybe I don't know, have we decided to modify it for boats? Is that what we decided to do? We are a boating community.
I understand the importance of flushing engines. I'm not sure I understand the importance of washing down hulls.
I agree. agree. The engines is pretty important.
And that's what
Yes.
I would limit it to that.
Yeah.
You know, because that becomes a very expensive.
It's very expensive.
Absolutely, as is landscaping, but, so back to motors now. How,
How long does it
Are
take
you
to flush a
talking-
motor?
right,
Not long.
you turn the hose on, you flush it out,
Depends how many
John.
of them you have, is what the issue is.
Well, fine, so I don't know of anybody who's got more than 4,
Right,
at least.
agreed.
It's a
It's
few
not a lot of
minutes.
water, and it's a one-time thing,
Yes.
you
It's a
know,
few
at the end of the
minutes.
season.
So wait a minute, when you're flushing it, where are you flushing it with all the oil and whatnot that's coming off the engine?
Either in the marina
It's
or.
not with oil, it's salt water.
Salt
It's just
water, getting the
it's
salt
just
out of
flushing
it.
It's just
flushing out the salt.
winding up in your driveway.
2 separate systems.
Okay, can people take smaller motors, outboards, small ones, to DPW? Or is this just, we're saying, when you pull it out of the water here, you flush it right there?
It's
You flush it at your house or at the
Flush it at
marina.
your house.
If
Okay.
you don't have a marina slip, you take it home and you do whatever you do, or you take it to the.
We've already decided the
All
marina
right, but
can
if
do
you
it.
have a marina, you do it right at the marina, or
Okay,
And we've discussed and we decided that the marina can do it. It's a business,
it's a business, right?
right? So
right,
I wouldn't
As
want to
in-
penalize someone who doesn't want to spend the money.
Exactly. You're talking about people who have boats at their homes and they just gotta hook a hose up to it for
okay.
20 minutes.
So I'm hearing from the majority of the board that the board would be amenable to flushing engines, the motors, not whole washing? Is that,
I think if you want to drag yourself down to the DPW and convince them that you're not going to make a mess when you wash the hull, you can do that, but I think as something could be permitted, flushing engines.
okay,
That's important.
So we're still flushing engines, we're still hand watering.
Yep.
To Sarah's point, I mean, she can hand water and drip.
okay.
And normally, Greg, when do we end up rolling these things back? When does these drought conditions normally end?
Usually with winter.
Unless you
First.
don't get enough water before the winter hits. I just want to go around the board and then we'll take public comment. John,
So I'm okay with what you said, but as a corollary, and this is going to be publicized some way in the announcement in the paper. How is our consumption rate going compared to the 20 to 25% that we are down? Are we still down that? Do you know? Has Chuck said anything? I've not asked him this past week.
Yeah, I haven't checked this past week.
Okay.
Obviously, we got a good
That
chunk of
should
rain.
be an addition or a comment in the.
as well as needing to redo audits if, just periodically checking on that, the water audits. Brian,
Everything we discussed, I'm good with.
Kathy,
Yeah, I'm good with it.
Ann?
I'm good.
Okay, public comment?
Mary Foley, One Pulaski Drive. I just wanted to ask, and I could be wrong, but I thought your prior regulations of hand watering said after 5 o'clock.
Yes, thank you.
So I think it's getting very cold, and especially with the time change, you might wanna.
This is a good point.
Make
Yep,
it from
yep.
4 o'clock.
Because it's after 5 and before 8 was it, or?
Why would we restrict it at any time?
Yeah, no, I don't think you
It's
need
the
to restrict
fall,
it anymore. It's,
The temperatures are cool.
Yep. So-
Noontime's good.
Go.
Well, the only thing I could foresee is if we have Indian summer days, where it gets,
Just a couple of days though.
okay.
Yep.
But thank you, Mary, that's a
Yeah,
good point.
that's a really good point.
Yeah, okay, so we will
No
not,
restriction on it.
not specify hours, okay. Anything else? Okay, may I have a motion then, please, to amend our current water use policy?
To amend our current water use policy to allow the flushing of engines that have been in use in salt water and to eliminate the hours for the other restrictions.
Second.
All right, Debbie, did you get the wording? Okay, moved by Ann Harrison, seconded by Kathy Bellata. Faster on the draw there. Okay, roll call vote. John Round,
Yes?
Brian Solacey, Kathy Bellata,
Yes.
Ann Harrison,
Yes.
Becky Jake says yes. Okay. Unless somebody has a critical liaison update, we'll forego those to our next meeting. And if anybody had any minute amendments that they sent in, otherwise,
I got this afternoon.
okay. So we will, we will pull out the approval of the minutes to the next meeting, November 7th. And,
Would you mind doing them on?
Why don't we do
Thursday?
it on Thursday?
oh, Thursday, okay.
It'll be quick, I just,
Yep, no, that's
Just a
fine,
chance to read it, right? That's fair.
yeah.
I spent a fair amount of time reading.
Other
Stuff,
things.
stuff.
So on the 20th, yeah, because I mean, there were
It's
just,
fine.
what I found were negligible. All right, may I have a motion to approve the consent agenda less item A, approval of minutes October 3rd, 2022.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, moved by Kathy Bellata, seconded by Brian Solacey. Ann Harrison,
Yes.
John Round,
Yes?
Brian Solacey.
Yes.
Kathy Bellata,
Yes.
Becky Jake says yes. Okay.
You might footnote that E, we did that right off the bat, 9.
Yes,
So
thank
it's B, C, D, and F.
thank you very much. Okay, town administrators report.
Just a few signatures.
Okay.
To consent. So first thing on my list, just to revisit the topic of office hours for all of you.
Yes.
Becky, I know you wanted to make sure we put that back on.
Yes.
Looking to start that in November.
I think that's a good idea, start in November.
We talked about Seaside One, there was some debate about being in the hallway and downstairs.
Yep.
Either one. We should wait until after voting, if we're gonna be in town hall, just because we have the early voting booths up.
Okay. I mean, I'm personally still in favor of it being in Seaside One. However, John thought it would be better if we're in town hall.
I'm personally in favor here, yes.
Yep. Okay, Brian?
I'd like to get out of town hall, so Seaside One, but yeah. I just think it becomes a little more relaxed.
Kathy?
I really have no preference.
Ann?
I don't know where it would be in town hall. The acoustics downstairs are horrible. And you don't want to block up the hall. This room isn't always available. Neither is 7. So yeah, Seaside One.
Okay. All right, so sounds like Seaside One it is. And what we can, you know, if when John does it, if he wants to meet in no, seriously, I think if
Hey,
you want to
nothing's
meet.
going on over there. I'm coming over here.
I don't think that,
Mixing it up isn't a bad thing.
yeah,
That's
I
fine.
would agree. So, all right.
What about these office hours, these coffee corners outside?
So there's a shredding event coming up on the 29th.
Yeah.
Oh,
People bring their papers to shred,
where?
back of town hall here
Oh,
on the 29th. If it's a nice day, there will be a crowd of people.
that's a good idea.
So that's just another event that you can
I won't be here.
be
Neither will
at.
I.
I won't be here either.
This is getting tough.
29th.
29th of October.
Kathy will be here.
I am
I
bringing
wanna
stuff to
say
be
10
shredded
to.
too.
She can go
Shred
shredding.
I'll have to give you the hours. I want to say 10 to 1, but I'm not positive about that.
Okay.
All right.
Oh, that'll have to check.
I would like to start up Seaside one in November, and what I was thinking, if everybody, my original thought, as we talked about, was on the Thursday evening when town hall is open, we could be over at Seaside one from 5:30 to 6:30. Does that sound, or what? That's what we had sort of been bandying about.
Is any specific Thursday, or you just,
I was thinking the second Thursday simply because the first, the Mondays we have meetings, the third Thursday is when we reserve that for extra meetings, right?
second Thursday? Yeah. That'd be the 10th.
Yeah. And I can take that on. Anybody want to sit with me on the 10th?
I can do that.
November?
I'm not available.
And 2 to 4, there is that effective meeting principles and meeting conflict that day. So,
I'll sit with you what time?
5:30, 6:30?
5:30 to 6:30.
Okay,
Anything
select
more than that
board
is
at, say it again?
Anything more than that is quorum, right?
It's okay.
If you want to do it instead.
What day, what's this,
I-
the November 10th?
November 10th, 5:30 to 6:30.
No, you can do it, yeah.
Okay.
Don't fight over me, everybody.
Okay, let's see if I can get this into my calendar without changing something else.
Okay, all right, November 10th, so. Okay, thank you,
And,
Greg.
This Saturday is the PTO event at NASCO.
Yeah.
Just another community
Fall
event.
festival.
Fall festival,
What day is that?
this coming
Saturday.
Saturday.
It's a full day, almost a full day event too, right?
It's a what?
It's the
Fall
fall
festival?
festival,
We-
games and some
Was that right?
entertainment.
Where, Masconomo?
Yeah,
Is this the one that has music too?
Yes.
and Chief Cleary was asking, he did not recall that crossing his desk. Was that before?
That was way before, yeah.
That was way before, okay, I'll let him know that, but, could we send him the information? Meaning you were
I think
Debbie?
he's got it.
Okay, all right,
I'll
thank
double
you.
check.
Okay,
All right.
Yep.
Construction on School Street, the end is in sight. They actually took up some of the bypass pipe on the upper end. They're working their way down. So a couple more weeks, by the end of the month, should be buttoned up and cleaned up. Not repaved, that'll wait until next spring. But it'll be much easier to get through. in a couple
Can
more
we,
weeks.
once that's all cleaned up, can we at some point revisit the speed limits on Pine Street and School Street?
so which one? Oh, the speed.
Yeah, I was gonna ask, where, we kind of left that off and we were
Yes.
supposed to come back to that
Yes.
discussion here.
Now that, we were gonna do it one and then next, but as long as, as long as School Street's cleaned up, I'd like to revisit that.
Yeah, there's also, Chuck would like to have some input in terms of how it gets striped again.
Mhm.
It's repaved in the spring, we've got some time to decide that.
Absolutely.
So we should add that to the agenda as well.
Could we add that, after the new year? We've got budget and stuff coming up, right? When do you want?
The later we wait, the more budget we've got.
Let's get it out of the way.
So when are you thinking we should do this?
I didn't have a date in mind, but next couple of months at the latest.
Okay, all right, so,
By the first, I would do it by the first of the year.
all right. So we can bring that up, second meeting in November?
Yeah.
Okay, that's the 21st maybe, something like that. Okay.
And then third item, just a reminder of the reception for Captain Digger, who's retiring after 39 years with the department. So that's this Wednesday at 12:30 at the fire station, if your schedules allow.
Now, I'm not
Make
able,
that-
is anybody here able to go?
I can go.
I can go.
I think.
So Ann and John
Yeah.
can be there.
Yeah,
Good, thank you.
yeah, that's great. And on the staffing front, we do have resignation of town planner Sue Brown. She's moving on to another position. This is her last week, this week. So I've sat down with her to go over current status of the different projects she was working on, and then working with other staff to make sure we're continuing on with those efforts. In the early stages of figuring out the transition in terms of what a new hire might look like. Want to get some input from different boards that the town planner interacts with. Certainly welcome your thoughts on that. So after we collect some information, we warn a discussion at an upcoming meeting. So if you have some initial thoughts, I welcome that. If you could send them to me, and we can add that to the mix. And Susan Becker was going to help out with a little bit of outreach to some of the different boards, just to get some of their input on that. So that's underway. And lastly,
So
regional-
question.
Yep.
All right, well, I was just have a question. She's departing when? This
week.
This week, okay. And the stuff she works on kind of just stops, because a lot of it is project driven,
No,
but
right, so
some of
we
it
will, we will
is
continue,
operational.
we'll divvy it up to existing staff to keep it going.
Okay,
And we'll see about, whether we can, what additional resources we need to bring to bear.
okay.
I mean, we may need to do an interim type approach with somebody, perhaps NMPC, perhaps private consulting, we'll see.
All right.
So yeah, we'll have more on that in a couple more weeks. So.
Is there any way to get the results of the parking study?
Yeah, so that's in the hands of MAPC to present the report, so they have all the data. So the next step on that is for them to prepare that report.
Okay, so we weren't going to see it before it got.
Well, you'll see a draft, and then you comment on that draft, both you and planning board and others can comment on that draft, and then a final report will be issued.
When are we expecting that?
When? So the draft should be in a couple, 3 weeks, so it's supposed to be all wrapped up by the end of the year. So yes, that'll be coming soon.
So before Thanksgiving, we should expect to see.
Yes. Yep. Anything else on that front? So lastly, just update on dispatch. I continue to be impressed with Regional. They are working very hard in offering different services to help us out as much as possible. They continue to offer equipment and software and fiber. They really want to make a robust, redundant system. So I really feel like they're going above and beyond. I think they are anxious to make this a successful transition. So they're working hard to make sure that happens. So pretty much on time. Major equipment and software orders are all in. There's a 12-week lead time on some of the cameras for the safe lobby, but that should be okay. So that'd be coming in first of the year. So no major hiccups at this point.
So Greg, we still need someone to be accountable for updating the information on the website. The last meeting or the meeting before, you showed us a nice timeline, we requested a couple of changes.
Yeah, that was supposed to go up.
And it's really out of date what's happening there, so I'm not sure who's responsible for that.
Let me work with Tiffany to get that.
Anything else?
That's all for me.
Okay, if there's nothing else, may I have a motion to adjourn?
A motion to adjourn.
Second?
Second.
Moved by John Round, seconded Kathy Bellata. John Round?
Yes.
Ryan Solacey?
Yes.
Kathy Bellata?
Yes.
Ann Harrison? Yes. Becky Jake says yes. We are done at 9:04.
Ooh,
Nice.
good time. I'm impressed.
Excellent. Thank you, everybody, for attending this evening.